Font licensing is a complicated mess and can have huge consequences if you use a font requiring a purchase license for a commercial project and you don't hold the proper license for it. Let's start with the easy stuff, the stuff that should not scare you. I'm going to talk first about the open font licensing, which provides the user to free use of fonts without attribution. A great example of this in action is Google Fonts. Here's what they say about the Google Font program, which contains all open font licensing. All of the fonts in our catalog are free and open source, making beautiful type accessible to anyone for any project. This means you can share favorites and collaborate easily with friends and colleagues. Google Fonts takes care of all the licensing and hosting, ensuring that the latest and greatest version of any font is available to anyone. That all sounds great. So that means I can use these fonts without fear of needing a license? Yep, you betcha. I love to find fonts on Google Fonts. Knowing I do not need to purchase a license makes me feel less worried when picking fonts for client projects. I'm also free to share the fonts with clients if they needed to use them on their computer as well. If you visit fonts.google.com, you will be able to view their entire font library and download the fonts you'd like to use. Open Sans and Railway are fonts I use all the time for my videos, and you're seeing Railway in use right now throughout this entire class. When you visit the Open Sans page on fonts.google.com, you can see the font author and view the specific type of open license each font uses. Please visit each font you plan to download and take a look at their licensing just to make sure. Not all fonts are open source. Some fonts require the purchase of a license or a EULA, an End User Licensing Agreement. There are different type foundries where you can find and purchase font licenses. I'm on typography.com, which leads to the Hoefler & Company website. They're a type foundry that sells hundreds of different font licenses for many different styles and typefaces. Take, for example, the Archer font families. I can purchase a license to use Archer on one computer, or I can purchase it for use of up to 1,000 computers if I'm at a large company and I want this font to be used on every computer in the company. But if I'm a single freelancer, I just need to purchase it for my one computer. But if I have a laptop and a desktop computer, I want to be able to use Adobe Illustrator and have access to the Archer fonts on both my laptop and my desktop. So that does mean I need to purchase a license for both computers. Who buys font licenses? Me? My client? Both of us? Fonts are essentially pieces of software used by other software, like Photoshop, Illustrator, or Microsoft Word, for example. When you buy a font license, you buy it for that computer, like it's a piece of software. For example, if my client owns a license to use, let's say, Adobe Photoshop, they can allow me to use it if I'm an employee of said company, and they purchase enough licenses for Photoshop for me to use on that company computer. If I'm a freelance designer, for example, I'm not part of said company, just a contractor, so I would need to buy my own version of Photoshop to remain legal, even though I'm doing work for said company. That same basic concept can be applied to fonts as well. Treat them just like a piece of software. If my client purchased a font to use in their branding package, that means if I'm going to maintain a freelance design work for that client, I also need to purchase a license for that font and charge the client the amount for that license. Or the client may have an extended license that gives me the ability to use it as well. But it's good to find out that piece of information from the client first. Font licenses come in a few different forms. This is where it gets a little complicated. If I intended to use this font for print design, for example, a flyer I designed in Adobe Photoshop, I can purchase the desktop license for this font. Or if I'm going to use it for a website, I need to have the web font type of license. Also, if I wanted to use this font as a part of a web application, there's a separate license for that as well. Fortunately, most type foundries make it easy by buying all of them in a bundle, so you can feel free to use that font if any application in any form. Of course, those bundles cost a little more. This is where having a font subscription pays off. You can purchase a monthly subscription at Typekit, for example, and be able to have access to all the fonts in their library. Adobe happens to own Typekit, and if you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you automatically have access to their entire font library and the licenses that come with it. Another good reason to be an Adobe Creative Cloud user. I noticed that Didot is a font that needs a license to use. I also noticed that Typekit has a version of Didot that is free to use because of my Creative Cloud subscription. If you want to subscribe to these fonts without the Adobe Cloud subscription, you can still pay an annual fee to have access to this font library. Remember, when you have subscription to a font via any one of these font subscription websites, and you pass your work on to another designer or to a client who wants to update or modify that work themselves, they must also have a subscription to Typekit, for example, to use the same font you used on Typekit for their system. Or they need to hold a license for that font you're passing along via any one of their software programs, or hold an individual license for that font. So we have covered fonts that you need to purchase, fonts that come bundled into software or a subscription, but what about those free fonts you can download all over the internet? They each come with a licensing agreement when you download the font. Read it carefully. Some require an attribution to the author, and some come with restrictions. I'm on a website called dafont.com, which is a common place to find these free fonts. When browsing fonts, I looked over toward the licensing, and I noticed a few different types. Some are 100% free, and these are the same as being open source. No attribution is required, but make sure you double check. Another may say free for personal use only. So if you're doing this for a personal project or design, you're free to use. But for a client, or if you plan on using it for a for-profit business, you need to purchase a license on the font website. When you download a font, it usually comes with a text document that lists the type of license it has and outlines how you can use it. And make sure you do this for every font you download online. You can never be too careful.